It's so funny.
So on April 29th, now I'm remembering, it's a Wednesday in Forest Hills. We got a really great group there. We meet maybe once every 6 months, open group. Really a whole entirely different topic, entirely different. I mean, that's actually one of my most interestingly different groups that I've ever hosted. That's interesting. Okay, 517. I'm doing 2 events in Belmar. For those of you who have not been able to attend, the Musical Affirmations event with David Young, that will be offered in Belmar. It's really not a bad trip, and we're doing it on a Sunday, so you really won't have any traffic. And it is a great event. And honestly, I don't know when we will offer it again, if we will, because every time we offer it, we always say, oh, that's the last time we're doing it. And then he's like, hey, Karen, how about we do the Musical Affirmations again? And I'm like, all right, sounds good. But I really don't have an idea of when that will happen again. But then we'll also be doing another event beforehand for a couple of hours. You can attend both or attend one on that day. 6/19, I'll be at the Eyes of Learning. My topic will be money wisdom. I haven't talked about abundance and wealth and how to grab more for yourself in a really long time. So if you're interested in that topic, it's not something we typically go to here. So that'll be a nice night. I'll be back at that awesome spa in July. Save the date. I just put that up there. You just save the date, okay? Just save the date, September 19th. It's a Saturday. Save the date. We're going to have a full-day event, and little by little, we'll be announcing what we'll be focusing on that day. Anybody have any questions, like I do? Anyone other than me have any questions?
We're probably going to have to change June and July's dates.
June and July?
Yes.
Huh.
Because June is, that Wednesday is before 2 of our big events. We have a big event on that Saturday.
Okay.
And Monday. And the 8th of July, I'm going to be away.
Oh, that's a good reason. Maybe there's a reason I didn't say the other dates, because I didn't say them. I only said the 13th.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so we'll write a couple of TBDs up there, and I'll go over it with you.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put that seminar, the seminar. Now it's called the seminar, my summer seminar. That's the new name. I'll put my seminar, and maybe we'll do it in July then, and just make one EPG in June and July, and kind of balance it out that way. Okay? All right. Numbers is not my thing. Any other questions? No? All right, so Michelle, now we know that you're busy on, that would be June 13th, I believe. Can you tell us what else is going on?
The 13th and the 15th, we have our East End Gala on the 13th, and on the 15th I have a golf event. So that's what we're doing then.
That's a Monday, the 15th?
What?
The 15th is a Monday?
The 15th is a Monday, yeah. And the 8th I'll be in Italy.
Nice. Didn't I just say, check the schedule here before you leave the country?
Sorry, I'm not
I did say it, okay?
I do love you very much. Very excited.
We'll Skype you in.
Yeah,
you can speak in Italian.
Very excited. I have cards over here for on April 16th. This is our event season, so we're like crazy. So on April 16th, we're having a designer show house in Mill Neck, and we're looking for volunteers. And there's different shifts and stuff to volunteer. If you feel like coming down, helping us out a little bit, that would be really awesome. All proceeds go to the Heart Association, so that's over there. I'll pass them out later. And I was telling some people before that we're very excited because we are getting a new position here, and it's going to be a program person along with a, what about that? A program person along with a development person. So it'll be like bringing our mission really into everything that we're doing. So like I talk about doing CPR and stuff and that kind of thing. Well, it'll be a lot more enhanced. It'll be, we'll really get people moving and shaking and, developing wellness and going for our mission of really making people healthier. So.
Excellent. And that would be great, a great addition for you, too, to have someone to rely on there. Okay.
So let's put it out there.
Okay. Good. Yeah, it feels like a good fit.
It's fantastic because what you would do is you would, bring whatever we have wellness programs that are free, that corporations don't know about. So you go and it's our way in the door then. You know, it's opening up the door for us to get into a corporation, but it's really doing, getting people healthier and getting them in the right mindset and doing whatever. So it's great.
Excellent.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
It would be fun. It would be fun to do. We'll wait for Karen to really develop this other stuff that she wants to do before we leave here.
Yeah. Yeah. I got my eye on you. Got my eye on you. Totally.
So it's a good thing.
Yes, most definitely. Okay, I like to begin now with looking at what might be in the news. Only one story came to me, and it came to me in a tiny way because I really didn't want to look at the story. So I'm sure you know what story it is. Story of the day. I did not at all want to look at it, so I know zero details except what might have come up in a headline. But it is, it is definitely something that's very, very topical right now. But it is the latest shooting of a person after a traffic stop, running away, a black man, and he was shot and killed by a white police officer. So it does seem to be a trend. I think it was in North Carolina or South Carolina. South Carolina? Huh? A couple of days ago?
Yeah.
Charleston? All the places I go and I take my people on seminars, And it was kind of interesting, and I feel like I shouldn't be saying this on the record. Hello, people on live stream. But I have visited Charleston a few times, and the last time I was there a month ago for business, but I'm always looking like, where might I want to relocate? Because anyone that stays in this weather in the long run is a little heavy. So I'm trying to find a place with less ice, perhaps, and moderate temperatures above 27. So as I keep looking, I go and I check out different cities and places, and it's one thing about talking to people, but I actually do get a really interesting feel for places. And the first time I went to Charleston, I had a feeling that I probably wouldn't choose to live there. And then this last time I was there, I really had a strong feeling that it was not going to be the right place for me. And it is interesting because I kind of like semi-interview people that attend events that I'm at, and then the staff at the hotels and people at restaurants want to pick. I like semi-interview people everywhere I go. They don't know they're being interviewed, but I interview them. Quality of life. What do you think about this and all that? And the answers are always like attuned with what it is I would want in a place to live when I go to Charleston. What I'm going to do is I want to talk about an incident that's a less energetically significant incident, and it's a bit of a parallel, but let's use it as a jumping off point because it's really a good way for you to see how things work. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story, and if I say anything whatsoever that might lend itself to you figuring out who any party is, don't figure it out. Do me a favor. Anonymity is wonderful. But there's a person that was in the news for a big scandal of doing something that was hypocritical in what it is that he had gotten involved with, that he was legislating against. Let me just set up the platform like that. So he's legislating against something, and then he gets caught doing it in a really, really big way. Okay? That's your backdrop for this conversation. So that person's family happens to also be incredibly wealthy, so they funded a lot of things. Their names on a lot of buildings, a lot of schools, a lot of wings, a lot of this and that. In one of these particular buildings or departments that they funded, there was a very uncomfortable firing this week. And the firing had to get done by a client of mine. So now, because of the firing, a very uncomfortable firing, she has to have a meeting with this person to explain and justify or rationalize the firing. So this is really awkward all around. Now, what makes this story so interesting, without any details, is the firing is because this person that was fired did the same thing that that other person did that was so scandalous. Now, because of legal reasons and confidentiality, my client can't tell that high-profile fellow why this other person was fired. That's really a strange circumstance, really strange circumstance, right? So my client is very stressed about this meeting, very stressed, because we're talking a lot of money, a lot of rationalization, a lot of justification, a lot of how do we move forward from here. How do you handle something like that with grace, and why did it happen? What it all comes down to is, why did it happen? So I'll just add one little detail. It did have to do with offense against women, let's say that. And so what I was getting in the session was that the person fired, I kept getting this young man, really young, like middle school age, and I could see that the person that was fired, let's just give him a name, let's just say Bob was fired, okay? So Bob was fired, right? I got this middle school kid, boy, in Bob's life, but I happen to know Bob's age. He's certainly not going to have a middle school kid. So I don't really understand why I'm getting this kid as someone who's going to have a major, opportunity to influence. So I just start talking about this kid and how the firing is going to change completely how Bob influences this kid, because he's just on the precipice of learning about what is a boy and girl's relationship like, what are women, what are men, what is respect, what is something that's acceptable, what is something that's not acceptable. So as I'm saying all of this, my client says, oh, by the way, Bob has a middle school boy, which, logically it didn't make any sense because the age gap was huge. So now I'm like really understanding this man who never had accountability for his actions with women is about to parent a boy who's going through his 13 to 18-year-old changes and experimentation and learning and growing and dating and all of the other stuff. Can you imagine how different Bob is going to be from this point on with his son? It's going to be completely different. So at a minimum, Bob's son has an entirely different trajectory because of this firing, entirely. And they are going to keep it hush about why he's being let go. They'll let him go with dignity. It's not going to be a firing or anything like that. So the boy will never know what happened to his dad. And so Bob gets to hold his shame to himself and not influence the value of his opinion to his son, because his son won't know the details, but he also gets to amp up the influence base from which he has conversations with his son from this moment on. And then it's not just his son. His son will have friends. Girls will come over, boys will come over, he'll be picking people up, he'll be interacting with that age group for a really long time. So now you look at, here's my client that's in a really rough circumstance with the firing to begin with and then having to justify it. But if that client were left to believe that it was all just empty and difficult and why did this have to happen and I can't believe it and I gave him opportunities to really be thinking his actions before what it is that he did. Now at least she gets to see the basis for what benefit it has directly with him, okay? Now, the next thing is everyone at this huge organization knows that Bob was an exemplary employee with an impeccable record work-wise, so now everyone's going to be curious about why he's disappearing. There's not a lot of reasons why someone would disappear that suddenly without a plan of action. So now they can start to think about what it might be. Some of them might intuit, you know what, I did get a sense of this, or I did get a sense of that. And now the ripples pass on to them, and if they were, choosing any uncomfortable behaviors, they might say, you know what, I have to settle down because my job could be on the line. It's not necessarily enlightenment to say I have to settle down because my job might be on the line. But if you change your behavior, sometimes your feelings of what is important to you and what you expect of yourself change following the change in the behavior. Okay? So now you got all those ripples going out of all of the people that came in contact. Now we have, let's talk about the meeting with this fellow to talk about Bob's firing. No matter how this man comes into the meeting, and it's going to be a little bit gruff, it's going to be a little bit of, here's what I expect, and here's what I want to know, and you really have to rationalize this for me and tell me what you've done in return. As soon as the conversation goes to, for legal reasons, I'm not at liberty to say the reason for the dismissal, it's going to bring up a lot in that particular high-profile person. It's going to bring up a lot of feelings of shame, of having gone through these kinds of experiences. So what it can potentially do, as he's fully comprehending there was something that happened that was not on the up and up, of course, or we would have found another way of dealing with this. Now that particular fellow is going to amp up his appreciation for the whole entire organization, because he's going to see that there's value in handling things in a dignified way and handling things respectfully, but handling things correctly. But also his shame is going to be triggered as well, which is going to make him want to express the goodness of himself. When we have shame triggered within us, for whatever reason we're carrying any shame, when a trigger comes that's a direct link to something that we feel shameful about, it makes us want to get other people to think we're really good people. So now that person still has a lot of influence over a lot of people. So if that stimulation of I want others to really see me as a good person gets re-stimulated today, now look at how many ripples are out there of possibility just because of that. So the point is that the session began with, this is really, really hard, and I don't understand the purpose, and I don't understand the reason. But then when you look at it, and there's really no long-term repercussion in a negative way to my client, except kind of, helping people to comprehend and make the transition, then you can see all the great ripples that were put into the waters, potentially really, really good and strong ripples. And the other thing, too, which was really interesting, was that sometimes I get these hits in the morning, and when I woke up, the hit that I got, and I have to credit for those of you who understand Ein's place in my journey. Ein said this to me a lot of years ago, and she has a very witty, almost cutting sense of humor. And what she said a long time ago was what I woke up with today, was in my ears. It's like, don't worry about anything. Those with low levels of awareness and old ideas, they're going to die off, so just don't worry about them. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, that's good news. All right, yeah, something to look forward to. I remember the first time she said it, I'm like, okay, well, I think, humanity's problems are resolved. They're just going to die. But what I was thinking about today on that session is, so she says this, whispers this in my ear this morning, like a nice way to wake up, right? So I was thinking, Bob is a little on the older side. She might have thrown him into the category of people with old ideas or behaviors that's going to die off. But instead of just killing him off now, we have the opportunity to keep him on the earth, but from an enlightened perspective, right? And I think that's kind of a little nicer. Why don't we try to, help those that are already here instead of sending them all home? Especially because poor choices in our perspective are generationally taught. And so if you still are alive and you're teaching things that are not aligned with universal wisdom, it's not only that you've got your issues, but you're passing your issues on to others. So to take someone and convert their perspective just a little bit, it's an amazing opportunity at any age for anyone to have that chance. So let's look at that. I think that this is a relatively simple and relatively calm circumstance because it's just one person and it's one person that we don't know. But we can see all of the possible ripples of goodness that can come from that. So now let's look at the incident in South Carolina. All right, one of the first things to remember here is that what you focus on will expand, okay? It's such an important thing to remember. And what are the things that we're really, really, really focusing on across our country now, ever since Ferguson? We're focusing on, ever since even before that.
Trey.
Huh?
Is it Trey?
Race. Martin.
Oh, yeah, Trey Martin.
Martin, I was getting his last name, but not his first. So ever since that incident in Florida, it really has been heightened. Trevor Martin. Trevor, that's it. Ever since then, things have gotten very volatile for us to look at between the black and the white community's perception of race differences, and then with Ferguson that took on a new kind of context with it being black communities against white police officers, and that got amped up with the incidents in Brooklyn and the shootings and the death of another black man at the hands of a police officer. So obviously this is very, very, very much in the news a lot. And it's going to stay in the news, and it's going to continue to happen as long as our conversation is about hatred, and as long as our conversation is about a lack of positive direction in which we are heading together in this country. As long as the conversation stays in a place where we're setting ourselves back 50 years or 100 years in our perception of race relations, then this is going to keep us having a conversation that will grow in its expansiveness because what you focus on will expand. So what we want to do together in this room is we want to perceive it differently than perhaps the news is portraying it. And what we want to understand is that the young fellow that was killed, murdered a couple of days ago, he is a soul. He was in a human body, but he is a soul. He is a high vibrational energy soul because he unconsciously allowed his life to create a conversation that can effectively bring positive energy and awakening into the waters of humanity. So as he is in the energy realm now, looking at his life and watching his family grieve and watching people feel angry and watching this divisiveness grow, he understands that he and all of the other souls that are working toward helping us unite and helping us to let go of these archaic beliefs, they're going to work harder to look at what people's perspectives are and to help people to change their perspectives, okay? And the reason I wanted to parallel it with Bob's story is because now police officers might not change their feelings, they might not change their premise for believing that black men might be different in their community than white men. That seems to be the theme. Whether their theme is that I am afraid of black men or their theme is I don't like black men, it doesn't really matter because the result is the same if they're acting out in accordance with either one of those beliefs. So now if police officers in general fear the repercussions of taking undue force in a circumstance of white officer and black man, again, if they change their behaviors, their level of awareness might follow the change in their behavior. There's no guarantee of it, but it might. It might. So the possibility arises now that all of the police officers in our country that are in these circumstances where they feel like there's some kind of divisiveness in race, or if they're prejudiced, or they're afraid for whatever stupid reason, but if all of them are thinking this result is so clear that this officer is going to be charged with murder and likely convicted, it takes the story out of the hands of the acquittal that occurred in Ferguson. Okay? So the result didn't really occur in Ferguson. Obviously the circumstances were very, very different than now. But at least the conversation comes to a place where there is nowhere to hide. You kill anyone on duty and it's proven that it is murder, you are going to go to jail. You cannot hide. The one good thing about the media is that there is no place to hide. They would have a very, very difficult time in this case finding a jury that could possibly say that an acquittal is in store for this. Okay? So here's this one soul, this one young man whose soul returned back home in the last couple of days, and he has all of this possibility in front of him. And all of the other guides and souls that are in the energy realm will be focusing on the same thing if that happens to be what their area of interest or curiosity or expertise is. And little by little, those shifts can happen. Little by little, we can make a difference in the ways that we have conversations and in the ways that we do things. I think one thing that was really remarkable was the report that came out about training in Ferguson that came out way after all the incidents, and how horrific their tolerance training was, and how there was like an active current of prejudice within the police department and an active current of prejudice against black people in that community. So it seems weird that in the year 2014 or 2015 that can exist. And it wasn't even subtle. It was relatively overt. How can that exist in this year? It just seems bizarre. But now there's going to be, as I said, less place to hide, because there is no place to hide anymore. There are whistleblowers. There is the media. There is, federal guidelines about what police departments are supposed to do and be responsible for and how. So there's fewer places that people who are prejudiced are going to be able to hide, and that's the goal. So our goal is to not necessarily have a conversation among us about prejudice, because if you're talking about prejudice as the underlying issue here, then what we focus on will expand. We'll start to see more evidence of prejudice. We'll start seeing more evidence of separation. But what you want to do is put on the lens of unity. Look for people that are united. Look for people that are living lives away from Ferguson or Charleston or any particular incident, and see that those incidents are isolated. Those incidents are uncommon. Yes, what you focus on will expand, so they seem a little bit more common now. But if you count the number of people in the world, you count the number of white people, and you count the number of black people in the world and in our country, look at how they are living together. Look in your own life. Look and see if you are living in a United States with people who are different from you. And it's more than likely you have let go of any faulty thinking of what separates one person from another a long time ago, or you wouldn't be in this room, you know? So we're not looking at prejudice, we're trying to find unity, find examples of unity. And in every way that you can be the power behind unity, then be the power behind unity. You know, celebrate your own excursions into being with people that might be I'll turn mine off too. Being with people that might be unfamiliar to you. You know, it's interesting, one thing when I talk about level of awareness in other cities that I might think about moving to, one of the main things that I look for is diversity. Because if there's no diversity in a community, to me it gives a strong indication about the level of awareness of that region. To live without diversity, to me, is like living with, you know, one arm and giving up a leg and another arm. Why would I do that? I want the whole of me. I want the whole of my earthly experience. I want the whole of people on this globe. I want the wholeness of possibility. All different people from all walks of life living together, not living on different sides of a railroad track. That's how I want to live. And so, yeah, am I able to find a lot of places like that? So far, not so many. Please email me if you have any other suggestions of places I should look at. But I'm going to keep searching. You know, it's a running joke in my family. You know, every time we hear new news about what different states are legislating in their anti-gay stances, my kids will, you know, cross off, Mom, you know, another state we can't move to, you know, and they're like, Mom, we've got seven left. We've got 7 left. Yeah, we got 7 left. And then all of a sudden, one state will overturn some archaic legislation that they just put on the books a month ago. And then they'll be like, well, we're going to put this one in the maybe column, but, you know, we really have to see how things go. And my feeling is not only do I not want to be around that culture or those people or that legislation, I am not going to spend a penny of my money in a state that is legislating in a prejudice or hateful way ever, period. Yes? Not acceptable. You know. And so when you're looking for unity, I could be a hypocrite. I could move to a place because it's economical. I could move to a lily white community and live there forever and ever and ever and, you know, have different diverse groups come and cut my lawn and do this and do that. I could do it because it might be an easier lifestyle for me, but I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not going to put my money into a state that legislates against anybody for any reason. So I have to put my money behind my belief system, and I'm going to continue to put my money behind my belief system. What's that chicken place? Chick-fil-A, whatever? Yeah. I don't even like to say it out loud. That chicken place. They're all, every time I travel in business, those places are like all over the place. I will never, ever walk into one of those places, ever. I would never patronize any place like that if I had heard that they had any kind of active hatred. That's exactly what it is hatred. But what I do is I will frequent places that are really wanting to show heart, you know, that are making a difference. And it's exciting to see that there are so many companies that are making a difference. Does everybody know what happened in Indiana with their legislation? What was the organization that pretty much got them to reverse their legislation? Does anybody know? It was called Angie's List. Does anybody know what Angie's List is? Yeah. What is Angie's List? Does anybody know?
List of contractors, like it's like a reviewed contractors.
Referral service.
Okay.
On the internet.
Gotcha. All right, so I know that there were some other companies that were talking about like not having their event in the state of Indiana or not having this there or not doing that, but Angie's List basically said we're pulling our entire operations out of your state because of that legislation. Within days, they reversed it. Mm-hmm. So that's where we have power. You have power with your pocketbook. You have power with your conversations with others. You have power with your choices. You have power in all of the things that you choose to do, and every single little one of them makes a difference. Every single little one of them makes a difference. We can't be lazy in our personal choices. Just any more than anyone in this room would ever roll down the window and throw a piece of trash out the window. No one in the room can do that anymore. If you're doing that you're not acting on behalf of your own belief system, you're basically rolling your window down and throwing your trash out the window. Okay? We have to put our trash in the garbage, seal it up, let it go to the dump where it belongs, and clean up the stuff that's around us by choosing how we spend our focus, choosing how we spend our money, and choosing how we spend our time. And that's what we can do, and we can continue to get others to do that as well. Sound good?
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
So Indiana's out.
Yeah, and it was such a runner-up, too.
Yeah.
Let's start by saying you have to be near water. So that kind of quite a few lists. I know it wasn't Indiana's fault that they weren't near an ocean, but hey, they got to live with their choice to be in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so they were already out. I'm sorry to say. Hey, but listen, I'll tell you, if one state just becomes like the epitome of high level of awareness, action, and thinking, and they're not near the ocean, I might consider it, okay? I am
What if they're in the
bendable.
north, like where it's cold?
Oh!
You don't have to be there all year.
Oh, come on. I don't, exactly. I don't have to be there all year. I don't have to be there all year.
New York City is very diverse.
Yes, it is.
See, that's an idea. Go half and half,
Yeah, half and half.
How about
So,
Hawaii?
I'll take a cold climate in the summer and a warm climate in the winter, and we'll be good. And I'm not kidding you guys. If you have any suggestions for me, email them to me, because I really am open, as you can hear. But the snow's got to go.
We'll all be moving with you.
Would you try another country?
I thought about that, except that I do, I always say your intuition is the greatest helping factor for making your decisions, of course. So intuitively, I know I could be very, very happy in even a different country. But you should be eternally wise and earth smart. And earth smart for me means that I know what it's like. Extended family, they'll come twice in the first year, and then they'll come once the second year, then they'll start coming once every 2 years. And we would wind up doing the same thing. I know what real life looks like. So really, for the sake of the people that I love and I care about, I just wouldn't go that far away. And that's the only reason,
How about
Yeah,
Hawaii?
that's why Hawaii's off the list.
Yeah, that is why
Same reason.
Hawaii is off the
Yeah.
list. Hawaii's off the list for that reason.
Yeah.
New York, California.
Yeah. Again, California is one of those places where people start to visit less and less and less after you're there a few years.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of it. Nature of the
Somewhere
way it
it's
goes.
supposed to be nice, but it's cold.
California doesn't have any water anyway.
Yeah, California has no water. No water at all. You only have salt water left there. I need salt water and fresh water. Good point, Dominic. Thank you. So, where have we got left for us to live?
Florida.
We'll figure it out. I'll keep you posted. I'm not going anywhere soon, so I'll keep you all posted. I will. I am going to keep you posted, that's for sure. And if we can't find a community, we'll build a community. You know? Huh? Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Well, the biggest modern caravan that this country has ever seen. We won't use covered wagons and horses, but we'll do it a different kind of way. All right, so that was my primary topic that I wanted to talk about what was in the news and how everything is interconnected, the anti-hate and, race relations as a topic. Just keep loving people. Just keep being open, keep being free, keep being, wonderfully adoring of all people. And whoever that person is, I don't care what shape or size or religion or color or sexual orientation, you still want to hold those in your circle to a high enough standard that they're living in the vibration of love in their interactions with you, period. Okay? And the more you expect that, the more you bring that in and the more you vibrate that to you.
Do you think that education has anything to do with any of this? People becoming more educated, and when people are educated or they go to school, they are around different people. They're learning different cultures and stuff like that. Maybe that'll.
I think it does have something to do with it, but I don't know necessarily as much as we would like it to.
Yeah. I met a young man this weekend from Rwanda. One of my daughter's friends came over from Rwanda, and he was saying how we were asking him so many questions, and basically that's what he was saying, is that the culture has changed so much because people are not as ignorant. So whether that's education or awareness, it's probably more awareness even than education. But they are so much more involved in learning about each other than
Yes.
they were before.
Yes. Yeah, I do. But what I believe is that education, at a minimal amount of education is really important for awareness. But you have to really always take a look at what the educational curriculum is. Mm-hmm. If you see some of the things that are being taught in some of our own states, it is a little bit mind-blowing that we could possibly be teaching certain things. So it does have to do with the level of awareness of the curriculum and the educational institution to begin with. So there is no guarantee that education for education's sake is going to make us be more unified. It is about what the quality of the education is as well. A long time ago, guys...
Have you seen the Common Core, by the way?
Huh?
Speaking of education, have you seen the Common Core they're trying to teach?
Yeah, we've seen
The one I just opted my son out of, the assessment exam? Yes, I have seen it, Dominic.
Where's the level of awareness there?
There.
There's none.
Well, all right, let me bring that up. Huh?
Pulling more out, there's more and more movement to pull them out of that, so that's got to have an
Yes,
influence.
that's it, exactly.
There's a tremendous movement.
Yes, exactly.
Actually, I think the scale's tipping the other way from what
Yes.
I'm seeing.
Yes,
That
exactly.
it's more likely, to pull out than to leave.
Well, the first year that I opted my child out of the assessment tests, there was just probably dozens of people that were opting out.
Just a handful.
And then last year, the numbers were up in the tens of thousands. And I just did my opt-out over the weekend. And so the exams start next week and then the following week. I think the numbers are going to be through the roof.
Oh, yeah.
And in all of the other years, I wrote just a very simple opt-out letter that I was opting him out just to give, the information of the details. This year I wrote a letter. And I don't know where it will go or whose hands it will get in, but I did it for a reason, because I felt that it was good to not just bash Common Core, but to talk about factual reasons for why it doesn't seem to be the most productive educational curriculum for our children. And so I worked on citing reasons why I wasn't in favor of it, and so on and so forth, and what I also thought the consequence would be if it continued. And the reason I really wrote the letter was because we think we can have power because we have the right to vote, because we're in a democratic society. But our power to vote isn't as powerful as it used to be because of, I really don't want to be negative here at all, but it's an observation. I don't mean to reflect on it in a negative way, but the observation is that special interests and money seem to have more effect than on what is legislated than our vote, our voice with our vote. So my feeling was Common Core, I might elect our state senators, I might elect those who appoint those who are working in the New York State Department of Education and in the state curriculum development areas. But I don't have a very direct link to the decision makers for New York State curriculum. I don't have a link. So my vote at the poll is pretty flaccid. But my vote about whether or not my child attends the assessment test, that's a powerful vote. So it will cause us to find that we have ways to share our voice, not necessarily only at the poll. And since our vote there is becoming less and less powerful, it's good to examine what other options you have, how else you can be heard, what else you can participate in. And that's the feeling. And I do think that the movement that parents have about pulling their kids out of the assessments, it'll probably result in a reversal of their decisions. Reversion. I'm going to make up all new words today. I think I've been like so out of my body today. I can't even get a sentence out of my mouth tonight. Like this human stuff, it really tripped me up. I'll try to pull it in again. Just don't give me any numbers, all right? What I was going to say is the other thing I was going to say is that it's an observation, but it's important to observe what's happening in politics today. In most cases, if a person who has really altruistic intent and has a high vibrational energy and a high level of awareness, if they're drawn to politics, the way that the machine is working right now is that on many, many, many levels of government, it's difficult to remain at that high vibrational energy among what is happening in our political environment. Okay? That's an observation. It is what is going on today. And I've seen it. I was instrumental in helping a woman become mayor in a town in New Jersey. I see it all the time with clients that work in politics or connected to politics. And so I get a lot of firsthand information of what really happens. And so since we not necessarily have the power right now to change our government through election, it's important that we exercise our vote in every other way that we possibly can. And that message will eventually get to the places where it does matter. And that's what we can contribute to changing the course of where the United States is right now. Vote where you can, even beyond just voting at the polls. But the one thing, yeah.
Why is everybody opting out? Because I'm not in that whole field. So, I mean, that's
there's a lot of reasons. A lot of parents are just opting their kids out because the curriculum is incredibly challenging for their particular child. The curriculum is really a curriculum that a very small percentage of children would succeed at. So it has to be a certain kind of brain function, a certain kind of behavior, a certain kind of ability to perceive things. So for a lot of kids, it's really a difficult curriculum, number one. Now, that would be the reason I would say the majority of people are opting out. That's not my reason.
Set up for failure.
Yeah, that's not my reason.
No, but
my reason is
the opt-out is being driven by the teachers because their evaluations on it.
Well,
when I first opted my son out 3 years ago, it wasn't a big deal with the teachers yet.
Yeah.
But now when the evaluations were going to start,
yeah.
then that's when, this has gone too far, because the teachers want no part of it, the evaluation part. But if they weren't being evaluated, they would just go along with the flow.
Right. But in a lot of districts, the edict comes from top down. It's all about money. If we have our state aid on the line because the superintendent isn't fully backing Common Core curriculum, then they can pull the state aid based on what it is that, yeah, exactly. So it is important that the districts have a unified front. So teachers are not allowed to say anything, at least on the books. So they're not allowed. So it still is very, very, very parent-driven for whatever reasons. And if it is because their own child is having difficulty, then it's fine with me that that's the reason that they're opting out, even if it's not a bigger reason than that. My reasoning is that number one, all children are not alike. My kids personally didn't have a problem with it, which I really am taking a unified stand here. I'm not doing it as a personal stand because my kids don't have a hard time with it. They didn't have a hard time with it. But what it is as they are assessing teachers more and more based on the Common Core, what I think is happening is we're really taking away the nature of education. We're taking away hands-on. We're taking away our ability to educate teachers and then let teachers educate children. We're taking away fun. We're taking away creativity. We're taking away spontaneity. We're creating this little society of soldiers, and only a percentage gets to go in the military at the end. Whoa, big bonus! You get to go in the military because you're in the 20% that can succeed with Common Core. So we're creating this that's just not realistic. And if kids are, and listen, no matter how much we'll get letters home, every district sends them out about these tests are not about your children, we're not stressing out your children, we're doing nothing different in the classroom. Kids are stressed in second grade about the test because the teachers are bringing stress into the classroom. The whole environment is stressful. It is stressful. I don't care if you say we're not stressed. They are stressed, and they're bringing it into the classroom, and the whole atmosphere is stressful.
So why, like if there's like all of these conversations about it, what is the message that Common Core is teaching us,
What it is exactly that. It comes down to that. If we're going to legislate and say all people are the same, we're not going to get anywhere. What if we instead embrace the differences among everybody? That is so much of the challenges in our country over the last 10 years is that we're trying to make everybody common. We are not common. I'm not common, you're not common. We learn differently, we act differently, we think differently. We have different interests, different curiosity, different capabilities, different propensities. We are all different. Isn't that one of the most shining things about the United States, is that we're allowed to be so different and then to coexist and create the reality of our choice here. It's almost as though, I always see it as like this giant steamroller is making its way across America and just kind of smashing everybody into one common level of asphalt. Well, we're not common. We're just not. We're not common. None of us are common. None of us are common. My other personal reason for opting out is, and this is really a stand that I'm taking, and this is definitely, I put a paragraph in my letter, is that they're now teaching math and science through language arts. You can't succeed at math and science unless you succeed at language arts. They don't give you mathematical problems anymore. They give you word problems.
My son just told me yesterday, but he says we don't call them problems
They're not called
anymore.
problems
They're
anymore.
math. I forget what he said. He told me yesterday.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. Yes, no, it's not a problem. You can't have any problems. Real, I'm not serious. I forget what he said. Text him right now.
No math issues.
Yeah, right. Right. Situations. We have math situations, not math problems. Not math problems. Yeah.
Challenge. That's
There was situations. Math situations.
And it's really funny. I mean, I think we can all, if you were here, if you were at the seminar for Getting It Right, guys talk a lot about the difference between the functions of the left and the right brain, right? Imagine you're a kid with acute left brain function, and you could have been going to MIT because of how over the top your analytical reasoning and logic and analytical abilities were, right? Well, Common Core is going to squash that dream on you because you're not allowed to do math or science without getting to it only through language arts now. So my feeling is, why don't we let kids have 8 subjects or 9 subjects and let them learn the subject at hand and stop mixing every other subject in with it so you can let kids excel naturally at some of the things that they're better at, and then help them with the things that they're not naturally better at. Well, I would rather see a kid come home with, some 82s and some 97s than to come home with some 75s and some 82s because they can't do math through language arts, And then they're afraid, and then as soon as their mind shuts off to their ability to manage that topic, their brains,
Self-esteem,
it shuts down for life, for life. Kids in second grade were learning math through word problems only with no math equations. They're like, they don't even, math is terrifying to them.
And then
And,
forever
you know-
they'll say they're not a math person. And that's the belief.
That's it, that's it, exactly.
I'm not an
Exactly.
English person, I'm not a math person,
I'm not
I'm
a
not a
numbers
science
person,
person, I'm a numbers, yeah.
But the goal here is, let's watch Common Core implode. We're going to watch it implode. Let's watch it implode. But let it open up a new conversation about what was inherently difficult about this. Why did it not work? Well, number one, people are not common. Number two, we have to put some faith in our professionals. You know, a teacher curriculum and the assessments even to be licensed to be a teacher, they're pretty rigorous. Let them go through their training, let them be monitored by their own districts, and let them be real people with real children that can react to different circumstances and different learning styles in real time every day. That's what it is. That imagine we had Common Core for mechanics. There's going to be a whole lot of cars leaving this country really, really, really soon. You can dust them off and look at them and maybe even play the radio, but you ain't driving them ever again, I'll tell you that much. But the challenge here is the bigger picture is, yes, Common Core is just a conversation about what we might be wanting to look at in our country. And it is that oftentimes one of the other operands in government right now is that those who are drawn into governmental positions or elected positions, they have not yet learned how to live as a soul, and they're still looking at their reality through the lens of their ego. So there's an appeal with power, with being able to execute forcibly, power over others, to have the final say, to be the one that legislates, to be the one that has edicts that are passed down. It's a very heady experience. If you're coming from a lower level of awareness and you become an elected official, it can be very heady. There is no checks and balances for how soulful you are when you get elected, and there's no program in effect to help keep politicians soulful once they're there, or to help them keep the lens of soulfulness when they're there. And so that's the biggest issue, is that even in the Department of Education federally, they're not really necessarily able to get out of their own egoic perception of wanting power, of wanting radical change, just so I can say that I was a part of this. So we have to take ego out of government, and little by little, hopefully, we'll be making small movements towards getting there.
When we had spoken about Ebola and why did they bring those patients here, basically we had also discussed that maybe it was a way of getting a vaccination for it, of bringing it here and opening up people's eyes. I think with Common Core, I think that our educational system has failed in many ways, and if you look at the way it's evaluated around the world, and how our students are, maybe this is a way of just bringing awareness to it, and then finding some kind of happy medium of elevating the system, because the system needs to be a little bit elevated.
No doubt.
So maybe it's,
Starting in 2008, I started to get downloads of an optimal education system for all, with a really high level of awareness. And I was downloading stuff like crazy. And anytime I've ever spoken to someone that's an educator, a superintendent, or a principal, or an administrator, or teachers, and we talk about this idea, everybody wants me to open up this school, a pilot school, and they want to leave their roles in public school education and come there. That's how much they believe in it. What's really fascinating to me is that I was getting these downloads in 2007, 2008, 2009. I can fine-tune them at any moment. I can open up the school tomorrow with the right funding. But what's so interesting is Common Core is the antithesis. It's the opposite of what I downloaded, which, sometimes the pendulum has to swing all the way over here in order to get to a place that really has value for everybody. I've mentioned this before in this group, that other countries see us as where, let me think of a really nice way to say this. United States is a bunch of muck-ups, right? And that's how a lot of countries see us, because, you know, we've got all these unwed pregnancies, nobody's getting married anymore, we don't value this, we don't value that, our kids are doing poorly in school. You know, this is the perception in a lot of other countries. But what's fascinating is that, oddly, we are on the spiritual cutting edge of what is possible. Because the one thing we really do pretty well, when the government doesn't have anything to say about it, is we let people be people in this country. You know, and we let them have the consequence of their choices and their beliefs and their actions and their thoughts and their feelings. Where in other countries, there's such a tight version of what is socially acceptable to deem you to be worthy, you don't have the option of being something outside of that optimal core, okay? So my goal is that as long as I'm here on earth, we'll try to get that opportunity that we have to let people be people and do so in a way where we can all lift all of the uncommon people in this country to their personal best. That's the goal. That's where we should strive. And I believe that it's possible. I really believe that it's possible. We can do it. I want to take a break and we can come back. And I know a few people had some questions, so there were 3 questions. I'll take your questions when we get back as well. So have a cup of coffee, mingle, talk about Common Core, if you will, was a composite of people, men and women. No one came from anybody's rib. They were men and women and in a balanced, wonderful energy that were living in collective consciousness, and they had the ability to still communicate without language. And that's the big part that you want to know about the beginning, is that there was no language. And as this first civilization came to be and came to grow, this whole realm was in harmony. And the reason it was in harmony is because we were sharing conscious energy with each other. When you connect thought energy to thought energy, there is no way that you can misinterpret anything. Not only were we sharing consciousness with each other, but we were sharing consciousness with this planet, with the plants, with the animals. And what arises from sharing collective consciousness is this term that guides made up with me called collective agreement. And collective agreement is when you have shared consciousness, then every single bit of consciousness anywhere has the same goals and understanding of each other's goals. So what arises is a cooperation among shared goals. So if you are an early civilization and you're living in the tundra, and the only thing that's there that's available as a food source is seals and fish, cooperative agreement means that the fish and the seals allow themselves to be the food for the human village. And it's all done in agreement, so there's mutual benefit. So no one is, killing seals for the fun of it, or just kind of checking out how it feels, or leaving unused debris on the shoreline. Everything from that seal gets used and becomes a part of the village and the cycle. So there's no agony. Everything is built within this amazing cooperative, collective agreement. And in cooperative agreement, everything stays in harmony. The change happened when we started to experience language. And if you remember that we're always on the edge, right? If somebody makes a sound in relation to something that they're experiencing, when you're living on the edge, you say, what if that sound is actually intended to be associated with that experience? So they started to associate sounds with specific things or feelings or objects. So if I, by chance, picked this up and said, wah, 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 every time I picked it up, then the whole village is going to say, I think, because I want to expand, I'm going to associate wah with water. And now language starts to come about. And then as soon as you hear, oh, everybody's calling this water, everyone wants to jump in. And then they're like, oh, well, what sound should we make for this? I don't know.
Give it a shot.
Well, that's way beyond me. Rock? I don't know. So that's how language came to be. But then as soon as you have language, then you have opportunities to break out of sharing consciousness. There's a break in communication, because the speaker has to know what they intend to say. The speaker has to choose the language to convey what they want to say. The listener has to interpret the language, hear the language, and then they have to interpret the language. So there's lots and lots of opportunities for separation of shared consciousness. There's no more thought energy working with thought energy. How you can see this in real life, in real play, you ever talk to somebody, and there's words coming out of their mouths, and you're like, I know that's not true, right? Exactly what they're saying. I just totally know that that's not true. It's like a weird feeling, right? They continue to talk, but you know it's not true. So the divide started on the speaker side, but somehow you picked up on their conscious energy, their thought energy, and you got the real truth. But when we became enamored with pushing that edge, we became all excited by language, we didn't really know that we might have to use this sharing of conscious energy to understand and interpret if we were picking up or perceiving what the speaker was intending. So little by little, cooperative agreement fell to the wayside, because as long as you can misunderstand one another, that's when we had the beginning of all that we perceive as being negative. Because when you have language and it divides you and it makes you not share conscious thought with someone else, you see yourself as separate, and you see yourself as finite. And if you are separate and if you are finite, it sets up a system that's the opposite of cooperative agreement, called competition. And when we live in competition, then we have to fight for our resources. And we can misinterpret whether there's something to be fought over or not. So basically, everything that has ever caused any chaos on Earth has been caused by the advent of language. So that's how I see our Earth began. And where we're heading is to get back to sharing conscious energy rather than being reliant on language to communicate with one another. In the beginning, in 2005, 2006, when I was going through that big journey of removing masks and layers and learning how to communicate with guides, that was the last time I ever read anything spiritual. It was in 2005 and 2006. And even then, I was really judicious about what I would read. I only read maybe 3 books, only because I wanted to have a basis of understanding what it was that I was experiencing. I think it was 4 books, actually. They all come to my mind. One of those books was written by a renowned psychic on Earth. And so I read it because I'm now a psychic, and I have no freaking idea what it means to be a psychic. So I thought if I read his book, I'd find out what it means to be a psychic, even though I'm doing it anyway, right? That would be a good way to find it out. So I read his book in that context, and let's say the book had 12 chapters. So I read the book, and I'm like, yeah, wow, oh my gosh, yes. And I felt like I had a kindred soul, finally. Like, I'm in this foreign consciousness, and I finally found someone that's speaking the same language with me, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. I'm so excited because now I know I'm not alone on earth anymore. There's someone else that's connected to this, whatever I'm connected to. All of a sudden I get to chapter 4. I had a knot in my stomach all the way through chapter 4 that was like, oh my gosh, like I was getting a stomach virus. And then I passed through chapter 4. I really, really felt repelled by it. I got to chapter 5, and again, I'm like, oh yes, he's my, soulmate, and blah, blah, blah. And this went on, and then all of a sudden, chapter 11, bottom fell out again. I had knots in my stomach. I felt really uncomfortable. I felt disconnected from things. And then I got to chapter 12, and I was saved again because everything in chapter 12 was resonating. And what I got from that experience, and I could see why my guides guided me to that specific book, was because it wasn't just about me finding someone else linked into the river of universal knowledge. It was also for me to see that you don't have to take everything as truth if you find a source of value. So here I realized that this man is connected. He does have his conduit open to the river of universal knowledge, and rather prolifically. But chapter 4 and chapter 11 showed that he has an earthly lens. He still has a human ego. And the information in those 2 chapters came through his human self. So I was able to intuit that those 2 chapters didn't necessarily belong in the context of the whole book, but that I could still value and appreciate the other 10 chapters in the book and feel that I had this commonality with him. So as we're wanting to get back to harmony, it's important that you have your own intuitive take on what you see and hear that's outside of you. That's the only way that we're going to get back to being able to share conscious energy again. Sharing conscious energy is the pathway back to cooperative agreement and harmony on earth. Not relying on language, but allowing ourselves to rely on intuition as the conduit toward our interconnectedness. Now, you guys know I'm a big advocate of learning to be more intuitive. Intuition itself, it's a very, very broad topic. Basically, all it means is that you have access to recalling something that you knew before you were born. That's what it is. And that when I always talk about being a conduit to universal knowledge or universal wisdom, the conduit is built through the vibration of love. If the vibration of love is cut off, the conduit closes. Intuition is love. It's our form to connect with all that is. It's our way to remember everything that we knew as a soul before we were born, and to get back to living to those truths. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Think about the Bible, though. What you were saying is so interesting, because how they said about how language was developed was the Tower of Babel, and everybody fell off the tower and spread out all over, and it was so it really goes with what you're saying. It was end of communication.
A simple,
not collective. It was now.
A simple way to give so much information in a story that you can take the story in so easily. Mm-hmm. David and Goliath, Adam and Eve, mm-hmm. and so on. All of these stories help you to understand a concept. They weren't necessarily meant to be taken literally. Okay? Well, certainly. And that's how I see humanity going. So, I always talk very optimistically about where we're heading, and we're heading to reconnecting with the sharing of consciousness, and we're heading back toward cooperative agreement. It's a little bit of a slow journey. It would be nice if it were a little bit quicker, but we are in an accelerated period of enlightenment. So I think things are going to happen even faster than we can possibly imagine, which is why we're seeing such exaggerated turmoil outside of us. Huge incidents that don't necessarily involve a ton of people. That's what we're seeing all over the globe. Huge incidents that don't really involve a ton of people. So we're getting opportunities for discovery and for increasing our positive level of awareness with fewer souls being affected, fewer humans letting themselves return home to get the same ripples where in the past we might have had hundreds of thousands or millions of people bringing about the possibility of that discovery. So we are heading there. And you have talked about autism here. Autism is a great way for us to comprehend how we're getting there, because the purpose of having the incidence of autism be through the roof over the last decade and a half is to help us to remember that being reliant on communicating through language will not bring humanity to a harmonious state. Once we are learning to be intuitive as a whole, once we are learning to live as close as we can to the vibration of love again, once we're learning these things again, or remembering them again, even something like autism will slowly dissolve because its opportunity for discovery will not be needed on Earth any longer. But it is there as a possibility for us to recall something. You know, again, I told you, I'm amazed when I look at how fast guides allowed me to remember things that could have taken decades if I was just plugging along my life. Some of these visits that they took me in, some of these really interesting experiences of people that came in as clients. I would have one or two things happen where in that one or two times I would learn or discover so much. And in the beginning, here's something that happened. It was 2007. It was the first time I was officially doing sessions. Still didn't know what a psychic was, but I was doing psychic sessions. And I had a fellow show up, and he was from Brazil, and he was a doctor. And when I don't have an affinity for foreign languages, so his English was just not there at all. I could barely understand a word that he said. I could barely understand. And I'm sitting there. I'm so new at this. I feel really, really nervous. I'm thinking, you know what, just get through it and give him his money back at the end of the session and just be done with it, right? Because you're not going to understand a thing he's saying. So I was very nervous. And I also was already at the place in my journey where I could kind of intuit how much somebody was living as a soul versus living as a human, right? So I'm already intuiting this guy is really high on the soul meter. So I'm excited to be with him, and now I'm going to muck it up because I can't understand anything he's saying. So I also felt very disappointed that I wasn't going to be able to take advantage of having this soul in my office. So that was a little disappointing for me, right? So we go through the session. You know, he's got all his relatives that returned home just like everybody else does, and they're coming in. And I'm like, oh, freak, what language do they speak? I don't know this language. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't understand him. I'm not going to understand them. And then all of a sudden, I would communicate with them one by one. I would know who I was communicating with, how they were related to him. And I realized, I probably thought they were translating into English for my sake, but eventually I realized that sharing consciousness, as I do with souls that are not physical, has no language. Thought energy meets thought energy. Language is not a barrier. I don't trip up in a session because I don't understand a word choice or because I don't understand the language of the soul that's communicating with me. So what I did was I just kind of did this monologue where I would tell him everything that I was getting, even though I couldn't get any feedback from him about what I was getting. And in the end, it turned out, it was one of my best sessions I'd ever done. I guess because I had already thought I'm going to give him his money back, I had nothing to lose. So I wasn't going to disconnect from what might possibly come through because I already had nothing to lose. And it turned out to be like a phenomenal session. He came for one purpose, and I brought through the answer of that purpose without having any idea whatsoever what he had come for. And to me, one of the reasons why the universe orchestrated that man to find me and come to me that year was so that I could experience the sharing of conscious energy and how simple it is to do with language not being a barrier at all. And that's where we're going to go to, is sharing of conscious energy, relying on our heart, relying on our intuition, and therefore being able to understand people better, understanding their incentives or their agendas, understanding them, and doing everything that we can in those meetings to make every meeting and every intersection mutually beneficial for us and for them. I know over time, I know when I started this, one of the things that I said, I made it as a declaration as part of my mission. And one of the things that I said was, no matter what happens when I meet people, I want them to leave feeling at least as good having met me, if not better. And I made that declaration back in like 2006, and you guys can tell me if it's not true. I think I've done a pretty good job. I can only think of like 2 or 3 examples where I know I didn't do a great job on my end. So I've been pretty good. And it's not because I set it as my mission, it's because the vibration of love compels me to do that. Because I truly like people. I really like being with them. I like looking in their eyes. I like finding out who they are as a soul. I like for them to appreciate themselves. I like that. I want everyone to like themselves. I want everybody to be happy. So it's not that I'm doing it to prove anything to anybody. It's my nature now. It's automatic that I really want everybody to be better off having met me, or at least the same. Just don't slide backwards, okay? No sliding backwards. And that comes from all of this. It comes from sharing conscious energy. So how is it that I can leave a lot of people feeling better having met me than before they met me? The reason is because I use intuition to understand what they bring to the table. Intuition tells me that they want to matter. I don't have to violate anyone's privacy by getting any specifics about what their journey is. It doesn't take a lot of use of intuition to know that everybody wants to be valued and respected and appreciated. But intuition might give me specifics about what it is that someone wants to be appreciated for in that moment. Just because there's things that make me happy if you compliment me about it, doesn't mean that that's going to be the thing that makes everybody else sing. But if you listen with your intuition instead of listening with your ears, you'll always know what can help someone feel better about themselves when you pay attention. And it'll always come from a place of truth within you because it's coming from intuition. So you don't have to fake a compliment. You don't have to fake a gesture. You don't have to fake an interaction. Everything is authentic. Everything you guys experience with me is authentic. And that is because I have chosen to live closer to the vibration of love and use intuition as my lens of reality rather than my analytical reasoning.
So I totally get about the intuition. So now you have like people that are not in these classes. How do I explain intuition to them to where we get it in this class? You know what I'm saying? Like, well, I'm explaining like what I'm discovering. How do I explain the intuition part? Like not as woo-woo.
I have kind of like 3 I have 3 pat answers I use, and whichever one I pull out is I'm going to intuit my audience. So have fun with that. So I intuit my audience, but there's 3 answers I would give. Number 1 is intuition is like getting information not through earthly means. like it doesn't come through your senses. Number 2, intuition is the way we discover what we knew when we were born that we might have forgotten, okay? And a different kind of audience, even if it's just a one-on-one conversation, I might say something a little bit simpler, like, sort of like your gut feelings, or maybe if someone that you love has, passed away, you sense they're present. So I'll put it into maybe a little bit more of a specific way that they could identify with without it being off the rails for them. Okay? Those are the 3 ways that I typically would answer. I went overtime, and I could keep going. But anyway, I really appreciate everybody being here, and I love that I love that you keep coming back. I mean, I know there's always new people here, but there's other things you could be doing on the second Wednesday of each month.
No, nothing better than that.
But I love that, every now and then you're going to hear a story that you heard already, and I can once in a while, like tonight, I could look at someone who I know heard a specific story, and I could watch like a new processing of that exact story that you already heard. So I appreciate that you're willing to let me tell the same story sometimes. Maybe I'll say it from a new angle, or you'll sharpen your understanding of it now because you heard it in the past, but you weren't quite ready to fully understand it. But I so much appreciate that you're willing to, listen to these stories, and that it excites you, and that it makes you go out there and want to be one who unifies others, one who puts ripples of goodness into the waters, one who can say, maybe I could have done 10% more having never been exposed to any of this information, but now that I have been, I know I can do 50% more, and maybe I can do 70% more. So I just appreciate it, and I recognize that no matter what size audience we ever have here, or in anything that it is that I ever do, that the hands-on that I get with all of you in this setting means that you guys are being empowered to be really powerful in the world that you live in. You don't have to know how, you don't have to define it, you don't have to be afraid. Just know that you're taking it in and you're changing without noticing, you're making other people's lives better without knowing it, and then maybe one day you're going to want to sit down and make it in a more organized path. And that's fine too, but that will never minimize the value of all of the shifts in the way you operate in this world to begin with.
Yeah.
Is there any way that we can help you? Because we want to get you out.
Get me on Oprah.
Yeah, I know. Anybody know Oprah?
She doesn't have a show anymore.
No. All right. Get me a conversation with Oprah.
She does.
Okay.
Sunday.
Get me that Super Soul Sunday.
50
Yeah.
grand.
All right.
Super Soul Sunday.
50 grand.
50 grand to get on Super Soul Sunday?
No, to talk to Oprah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll get that.
We'll let her call me.
We'll get you on there.
We're
going to manifest it.
Okay, we'll get it manifested. That is, I think that would be really helpful. But there's other steps along the way that could be very helpful as well. A lot of people here, they go to Omega. When you go to Omega, leave a paragraph with the program director saying, I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. You have to get Karen Garvey here. If at the end of a couple of months they've got 17 of these letters, they're going to pay attention. So you can do certain things. You can share. I know it's not always easy to talk with the guy behind the counter in 7-Eleven or Starbucks or something and tell him that, oh, you got to go see Karen Garvey. I know that. But there are places where it's very appropriate for you to speak up, like Omega, Kapalu, and so on. So I have tried to figure out this pathway on my own, but I am an individual in the collective, so I will not hesitate to take the wisdom of every person that it is that I come across and help me to be able to be a conduit for reaching more people, because I don't know how to do it alone. If I knew how to do it alone, I would have already done it, right?
Right.
I can say that I feel comfortable that my conduit is clear enough that I can bring information of value in any setting, in any audience. So I would love to be able to have the opportunity to do that in a really big way. Okay?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me personally, the ego part, I know you have to use my name, Karen L. Garvey, but to me, it's like I see myself as a conduit. So if I'm asking you to promote me, I'm really asking you to promote this conduit. That feels more comfortable for me. I've polished up and shined this conduit more than anyone I have ever met. So if Karen L. Garvey is the one that did all the polishing and the words have to come through my mouth, so be it. All right? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. And now I'm going to switch topics altogether. I did want you to all take a look. Marie Finnegan, who's here. Where is she? Oh, there she is. She does these paintings that are out of this world, literally, and she did contact me to ask if she could bring a couple in. I know I see them through Facebook. I encourage her to put them, post them on my Enlightenment Power Group page. But if you would like to go and look at the ones that she brought in today or have a conversation with Marie about how she paints these, or if you're interested in purchasing or finding out anything more about how you can bring her work and her view and vision into your world, please talk to Marie when we leave, okay? And once again, thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and I will see you very, very, very